Taryn is bored with his assistant pig-keeper duties, even though his charge is none other than Henwin, Predane's only oracular pig. He'd rather be doing something more heroic, like making swords and learning to use them. When Henwin escapes and Taryn goes after her, he finds himself further from home than he's ever been. Soon, he begins to realize that heroism is no easy task. With the dreaded Horned King on the loose and King Iran gathering the forces of evil, Taryn must look past his own dreams to warn the population of Prydain before it's too late. The Book of Three, Lloyd Alexander.
Hello.
Hello.
Welcome back.
Welcome back to the YA Sisterhood, a podcast where us, two sisters, we two sisters, do literary analysis through our noses because we have been sick for 2 weeks.
So I would like to preface this episode with saying that Jessica got over mostly being sick.
Yeah.
And I just got a different sickness, and it is still all up in me.
But then I also took on another job.
It's true.
So
we may sound tired, and I may cough a little. I will try not to cough at you.
We're trying to keep up with everything, but, you know, winter is attacking us. It's coming for us.
I'm sorry, I could not.
You guys, I am so excited about this book. I'm so excited.
She is very excited.
This is I wouldn't say I'm into Lloyd Alexander as you are Tamara Pierce, but this is probably the book I'm the most excited to do for this season because it was our alternate for this season. We swapped it out with something else that I was not excited to do.
Yeah, I wasn't either.
And it's one of my favoriteest books from my teenage years. It's one of my favoriteest books from my teenage years. And
it's a good book.
It's a very good book. It is The Book of Three from the Chronicles of Prydain, Book 1, by Lloyd Alexander.
So let's talk about Lloyd Alexander for a second. We both kind of briefly looked him up. She's always been a fangirl.
Yeah, I'm kind of a fangirl.
But I didn't really know that much about him.
I didn't really either. I knew he won the Newbery Award for a book in this series, which is a wonderful book. It's so good.
I learned that he grew up during the Great Depression, which is interesting, and he loved King Arthur stuff, and that's not a shock at all.
No, not even a little bit.
He graduated at 16. He's wanted to be a writer since he was 15, which I relate to because I wanted to be a writer since I was
since you were a wee lad
like
as well.
10. I don't know. So that's pretty cool. But his parents wanted him to not be a writer. They tried to get him a job as a bank messenger, which he, I guess, inspired his first book, kind of.
Yeah.
Which is satirical.
He started off in nonfiction before he moved into, he didn't start fiction until he was in his 40s.
Yeah. It's definitely interesting. He also said that, he didn't really know much about being a writer, neither did his parents, and they cautioned him against it, and he did it anyway.
Yeah.
And he kind of regretted it in some ways because it was a lot harder than he thought, but I think probably overall
Well, he talks a lot, about, through his author-intern character, quite a bit about liking elements of being a normie, basically, but also really liking the freedom of being a bard. And, that's something I've seen come up a lot. One of my art professors used to use a story about why it's great to be an artist, what your function in society is. He would say, when you're on a farm, you keep chickens in a coop to lay, but you let some chickens roam free. You have to let the coop chickens see the free chickens, and that makes them lay better because it gives them hope, which is very dark. But you
That's
artists,
so sad.
I know, he's like, but you artists, you're the free chickens.
That's not true.
But that's the dean of my art college.
Well, he also went through a war, right?
Yeah, he was in World War II, but he was at the end of World War II.
Personally, I think
it was part of
shows in his writing.
Yeah, and
especially in the themes aspect of it.
Yeah, coming of age parts, I think.
Not just the coming of age, but I definitely think that there was an element of the cost of war.
Yeah, I think so. And that comes up again and again in the series. And I don't, sort of like with the Tamara Pierce, I'm going to try not to like reach into the rest of the series too much.
I read the first couple of these when I was younger, so young that I don't remember it.
Yeah.
Like it was like freshly new to me, which is always a nice experience. But I remember some stuff from the later book in the series, but I never finished the series. And now I really want to go back and find out what happens. Because sometimes I'll just be sitting, like even before this, and be thinking about it and being like, what happened in that series? And I just never get up and like, because I knew I'd have to start it over. And so I'm excited now because I'd like to go back and reread it.
I'm excited for you to reread it. I think, like, I feel what you were feeling when I started reading the Tamara Pierce book. I'm like, yeah, do it.
And like the Tamara Pierce book, I have a lot of trouble not just getting swept up in the story and paying attention.
Yeah, it was really tough. I want to circle back to some things here in a minute, but yeah, it's really tough to analyze books that are enjoyable to read for me because I can't. I just want to read. And plus I had to do this at one of my jobs most of the time this week. You know, I was trying to like slot it in where I could. And that made it a little tougher to take notes too. So this is raw YA sisterhood.
Ooh.
I wanted to circle back while we're talking about Lloyd Alexander too, and acknowledge something that some people are probably screaming at their computers or wherever you listen to fine podcasts. And yeah, this is the actual story sort of that The Black Cauldron is based on. The movie that killed Disney animation, or at least 2D Disney animation. It's not a good movie. I still kind of have a soft spot for it.
I didn't realize it was based off the series.
Yeah, it's based off of the series. It's based off of the name is from the third book in the series, which is The Black Cauldron. The story is from the second book in the series, I believe. It's a big
much logic.
It's like this big mishmash of the first couple of stories like thrown together badly, and like kind of it mishandles a lot of the themes of the story. It tries to tell it as kind of a straightforward like sword in the stone type Welsh mythology story, and it's not really that. That's not what the story's about.
So if you watch the show and you didn't like it and you haven't read the book,
give the book a shot.
Try to give the book a shot. Yeah, it's good. So what are some of the themes that you saw?
The exploring the nature of leadership is one I think that's really, and it's one that he comes back to throughout the series. So I think it's important that he establishes it so early on.
Leading through being humble or being teachable, change or the passage of time, and the cost of war.
Coming of age is a very big one. Yeah. It's a very if you're a Joseph Campbell stan, it's a very straightforward hero's journey type of story that way. It's very much Taryn, our main character, starts out in Caradal Ben, which is all the stories based on Welsh mythology. When he starts out in his small, like his provincial home space, it's very traditional Disney that way. But he starts out in this small space, and he, through circumstances beyond his control, is thrust into the grander world outside of Caradal Ben. Has to rise to the occasion of leadership. It's pretty standard. At the very end, when he comes back, he even discusses, how Caradal Ben feels smaller, which to me immediately makes me think of Campbell, because that's something he talks about when talking about the hero's journey in his lectures. Is when the hero returns home always feels different because
they've grown and
they've grown. Exactly. And that's very Tolkien that way too.
It is. And it also, weirdly enough, felt very much like Zelda-esque, right out of time when you go back to the computer forest and everything's different.
Yeah, because you're big now and no one else is.
Yeah, it's just that sort of sad, somber, things change, but they don't, and that's still sad. Yeah. I don't know. It captured that really well.
There's even a moment where the character Eilonwy talks about a sad song that Fluter Flam the Bard plays. How it's sad, but it's a good sad.
And he does that throughout the whole book.
Sure. And he even talks about it in the language of the trees and the wind and he's a very evocative writer.
Which we'll kind of get into.
I fit the word evocative in again.
Yes.
Sorry.
Well, it
I'm very
has to
proud.
go in every episode.
It does.
So let's talk about Taryn, our hero, or
Yes.
in quotations,
Our
hero, or lowercase h hero, I guess.
Yeah.
Taryn is such an interesting protagonist. And I'd say that because, yeah, I mean, he's interesting in himself and his personality, but in the use of him.
Yeah.
As he is not your stereotypical heroic character, but he's not heroic either.
Mm-hmm.
And
he's a very human, very realistically written young boy to me. And, I forget how old he was in this book. I think he's 14.
Does it actually say?
I would be surprised if he wasn't 14. I believe he is, because I think in the next book they talk about him turning 15.
Yeah, I think he's 14, 13 or 14.
14 is a pretty traditional age for young men to strike out in heroic stories. So
it's really interesting,
we'll say he's 14.
because he starts out wanting an adventure like most young people, like me as an adult, wanting to go adventuring, and it's very relatable. And even Cole, who he works with, is kind of like understanding of that, and is like, well, I mean, you're getting to that age
too,
where you can learn.
Yeah,
some of
like
this stuff.
It wouldn't hurt you to start learning some sword play, maybe. But
he's not actually good at any of it yet because he hasn't learned how to do any of it. But he's very brave.
And he's also very sure of himself.
Yes.
He's very cocksure.
He's 14.
He's a 14-year-old boy. But he's willing to make excuses for himself when he fails because he's so sure he's going to be right. And that's like such teenage white boy energy. Yeah, oh my God.
That's a lot.
It's so realistic to me.
So whenever he finally gets to sort of start his journey, and he very, very quickly realizes that he is not the hero, and that he is traveling with the hero, and he is kind of in the way. And it's very nice in a YA book to see that happen so well. Yeah. Not in like a despairing, like, oh, woe is me, but in like, oh, I gotta pull my weight because I'm in the way.
Yeah.
I'm
going to get my friend killed if I don't get it together. And just like that sort of crash into reality that we all get when we're teenagers. And
the first time you realize like, oh wait, I don't know everything. And like, not in like that my parents say I don't know everything, but in like legitimately like, oh wait, I was wrong in a worldview. And that's such a jarring experience when you're young, the first time you realize outright, like, my worldview was wrong.
Yeah. So Taryn's job is to be the assistant pig keeper to the famous oracular pig Henwin. Oracular meaning she can tell fortunes in the future. Yeah. She's a pig of prophecy. And Henwin is a queen. I love Henwin so much.
Henwin is great.
Henwin is amazing. She is a Snow White pig. I don't know, like that's a Welsh mythology, another Welsh mythology element. But she's a Snow White pig with a lot of attitude and a lot of friends in high places.
Yeah,
she gets around. She was born a normal pig. She probably would have lived a normal pig.
Wait, she was?
Yeah.
I don't think
like she was born on a farm. That was in this book.
Oh, I missed that.
Yeah,
totally missed that.
Well, it's when at the end when Gwydion is talking about Henwin, like where Henwin comes from.
I don't think. Okay.
No, it wasn't Gwydion. It was not Tom Bombadil, Medwin.
But I also really love the relationship between Henwin and
Taryn. Yeah, it's very sassy.
So Henwin gets lost, and when they finally are reunited, it felt very real to me. That sort of like animalistic affection. Yeah. Of like, you're back. But also like, I'm independent, but you're back. And I really liked that. And I don't know, I think Henwin could have just been a pig, but Henwin had a personality.
But well, that's her backstory is like how she came to live at Cair Dalben. Is she was born on a farm. And she probably would have lived a regular, normal pig life, only Aran, the bad guy, found out with his magic evil powers somehow, for plot reasons.
That the farmhand, sold her.
Well, he did sell her, but he didn't know that she was oracular, but Aran already did when he saw her. So he took her and tortured her, trying to make her powers grow and made her a fancy magic pig. And eventually she was rescued by Taryn's co-worker and mentor character, Cole.
I also really liked Cole.
I love Cole.
He's not in the book for very long.
In later books, he reminds me a lot of our Grandpa Steve as a character.
See that.
Especially in later books. And
but
so it's
in
like...
in this book, he wasn't even really in that... Like, his page count of, like, him actually being present is probably 3 or 4 pages. But he left a big impact.
Like, choose the scenery for sure as a character. He's a lot of fun. He's just a pig keeper. He's the guy who runs the cairn. It's his cairn. He was awarded it for rescuing the pig.
But, like, Taryn doesn't know any of this about him, but he learns shortly after leaving that Cole is, like, a hero of legend.
And he had no idea.
And it's fun because this book does a good job, which we can get into more later, of
teaching the lesson of humility.
Not just humility, but also that, like, what is a hero and what makes a hero? Is it being looking just like heroic or looking heroic, or is it the actions and what actions are heroic? And Cole is a fun example of this, as well as just in general.
Yeah. And kind of to contrast the town wizard Dalbin. He's not a wizard, but he is a wizard.
The not wizard
Dalbin is he holds the Book of Three, which they don't discuss too much. They talk about the fact that the Book of Three is this sort of legendary book that chronicles the history of Prydain, and it tells the stories of Cole and Henwyn, but it also tells the stories of all of the princes of the Sons of Dawn, like Gwydion, who we'll talk about later. And Dalbin's job is just, he's the story's wizard. I don't know what else to say about him.
Essentially. He's kind of crotchety. He meditates a lot.
He delivers our moral for us. He delivers a lot of exposition.
For no reason.
Yeah.
And then he expositions on some stuff. But he doesn't explain things to Taryn, and he doesn't really want Taryn to grow up
He's basically the Gandalf from the Hobbit movies.
Yeah. Well, no, because Gandalf, like, pushes them to go. Whereas in, like, Lord of the Rings, he's more like, I don't want you to have to leave the Shire.
Yeah.
Because I think of you like a nephew or like a, you know, but outside of that aspect, yes, from The Hobbit.
so yeah, anyway, speaking of Tolkien, my only note that I got to write down at work for Gwydion was, Strider, anyone?
Gwydion is our other hero. He's our hero with the big H.
Yeah.
He is the son of some magical dude.
He's the son of the king. He's the son of the High King.
Yeah.
Of Prydain.
And he is essentially the man. Like,
he's next up on deck.
The hero of legend, like the hero of legend, and very much the golden boy, the light force in a dark world, like all of that jazz. Like, he has a very long list on his resume.
He's our paladin. So
he's kind of, I mean, I like him. He can be a bit brisk. But he's busy. Yeah.
But I kind of liked that he wasn't just perfect.
Yeah.
And he's not just perfect throughout the story. Like, there's a moment where he chastises Taryn in the book for trying to rescue him from Gurgi, another character we'll talk about in a minute, because Gurgi's harmless, and he realizes Taryn couldn't have known it was Gurgi in that bush. All he did was try to protect him, and he's like, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have gotten on to you.
Yeah, I appreciate your bravery and your effort, and like,
you're doing better than you think, bud.
Yeah, he gives him some positive reinforcement, as well as some much needed slaps of like
reality. And I think he immediately takes a liking to Taryn too.
Yeah, I think so too. I think he probably sees some of his younger self in Taryn a little bit, because the thing with Gwydion, and I think this isn't explicit. I think to an extent he had to have some growth at a young age as well, in order to become who he is. Because no hero is born a hero, not really.
Well, I don't know about that, because we're going to talk about that with the sword. When we talk about the sword.
Well, I don't mean in every aspect. I just mean in some, like in the...
He certainly had to grow. Well, he even has growth within the story. In the story, he's captured by one of the baddies and tortured, and he talks about, like, because of how he had to escape the torture, he came to be enlightened about a lot of really important things. And, there's some magic happening in this universe. So there's a magic element to his enlightenment. Mm-hmm. But he sort of grows even more wise as a result of his experience, his negative experience. Mm-hmm. And I kind of like that he acknowledges that growth in the story as well and makes it important.
His horse.
I love his horse is Mylingar.
I didn't necessarily want to talk about Mylingar, but
I insist. Mylingar is another sassy queen.
Mylingar is really great.
She's also a very important character in the rest of the books.
Stop talking about the rest of the book.
But she was a character in this book as well. And she was introduced as a character in this book.
She does actually rescue Gurgi, who we'll talk about soon, in a really important time. And she does have a temperament in terms of...
She's got a personality.
Yeah.
Like, she's got a say in the group. Mm-hmm. Like, Taryn respects her as, like a combatant in the group and a member of the group. Even though she never says a word, and even though she's definitely still a horse.
Yes.
The whole time. She's not magic. She's just a horse.
She's just a horse, but she is definitely a presence to be reckoned
She is a fancy horse. She's very fancy.
She's a war horse.
Yeah, she's the war horse of Gwydion. And her sire becomes Taryn's mount in the rest of the series.
Which he gets at the end of this book.
Yeah, he gets at the end of this book. So it is related. Mm-hmm. But it becomes a big point of
Well, we've talked about Gurgi like 4 times. I think we should talk about Gurgi.
It's time to talk about Gurgi. Gurgi is great.
So Gurgi is a sort of monstrous, not quite human, not quite creature, who is basically a cinnamon roll. And he lives in the woods, and he just begs food off of people.
Yeah.
But he thinks he's really fierce and dangerous and scary. He thinks he's really, like, fierce and dangerous and scary.
Yeah.
And he's really not... He's very cowardly and, well, not cowardly.
He's not a coward. He's just...
At the beginning especially, he's kind of cowardly. And not in, like, I don't mean that negatively. I just mean that in a self-preservation sense. He's very much big talk.
Yeah.
And he and Taryn kind of hate each other at the beginning. It's very much, he's almost like Gollum.
Yeah, he's like,
in some ways,
a better Gollum.
He's a better Gollum. I kept thinking that through the whole thing. I was like, if only this could have been Gollum.
I don't know. I love Gollum too as a character study, but it's such a different kind of character study.
So they have a moment where they reconcile, where Taryn realizes that Gurgi is a person to an extent.
He's like the anti-Gollum that way. Because his storyline is exactly the opposite.
Yes.
Because Gollum is a human who became a thing. Gurgi is a thing who's becoming more human throughout the narrative.
Mm-hmm. And they get together, they meet in the middle a little bit, and Taryn realizes, like, okay, he's all right. And then Gurgi gets hurt and is like, you guys go and be safe, and I'll stay behind and, like, die. And Taryn realizes in that moment, like, no, I'm not going to let you die.
No,
like, you're a part of our group. And that touches Gurgi, who is, after that point, like, I will die for this group.
Yeah.
Ride or die.
They're so ride or die. This group is so ride or die.
And there are moments throughout the story where Taryn could have sort of, and I kept waiting for it, betray him, like Frodo, quote unquote, betrays.
Yeah.
And he doesn't, and they continue to grow together, and I really, really appreciated that, and because, like, the whole Gollum thing just breaks my heart, and Gurgi is just so sweet, and I just love him. This isn't really analytical. This is just me waxing poetic about Gurgi.
Gurgi is great. Gurgi's also the best part of the animated film, in my opinion.
I haven't seen it.
So we're just going to make a hard cut right into Eilonwy.
Okay, all right.
It's like we got not a lot of time. I'm tired.
Eilonwy is...
great. I love her.
She's a chatterbox.
She's a sassy chatterbox.
And I felt a bit personally attacked because... I am a bit of a chatterbox, but more than that, when I was her age, I was exactly the same. I was so obnoxious.
She's so great, though. She's so mean to Taryn.
I know, and I love it.
And, like, the worst part is the way she's mean to Taryn is that he can't pick up on it.
He doesn't realize.
It reminds me of my husband a little bit. He's one of those people that he'll, like, say something, and then like in a fight or something, and you'll leave the room and you're like, wait a minute, that was mean.
I feel like I do that too, but not as much to the people I'm close with.
Yeah.
I kind of do that to the people I don't like.
She does it as a way to be affectionate, and it's really sweet.
And it's great.
She kind of just immediately was like, this kid needs my help.
And she's really bright. Like, she's not
a great
dumb,
character.
But because she's that's one thing. I like the way that she was written, because even though she's a chatterbox and very hyperactive, and in some ways that stereotypical young girl who's just kind of all over the place, she's also really bright, really diligent, and really, really problem solver. Like, she's a huge problem solver through multiple points in the story, like figuring things out and knowing kind of, or if she doesn't know how, she'll figure out how, and kind of scientific mind in that sense.
Yeah.
And I really appreciated that she was shown as bright as well as a young, regular girl. And that's usually, it's like, if someone's a chatterbox and hyperactive, that's it. They're kind of an airhead, and I appreciate that he didn't lean in that direction.
No.
Let her stand as her own character.
She's another one of those characters that is a character type that he likes, because that's another character that's sort of rehashed in, like, the Arcadians, for example, which is another story based off of mythology, and it's more explicit about exploring gender dynamics. But that sort of character of Eilonwy is one that he comes back to. He seems to really like her a lot, so he kind of brings her back. And she's great. I love her.
Also, her bauble is cool.
Her bauble is cool. She has a glowing ball, a glowing orb.
It just, like, follows her around.
Yeah, and it's fancy, and it's pretty great. She helps everybody rescue Fluter Flam, who is my favorite character, and also is doing the most.
He's doing. I was about to ask you, who is doing the most?
It's Fluter Flam.
He's definitely doing the most.
It's Fluter Flam, or it's
or die,
or Fairy King, one or the other. Yeah, Fluter Flam or Fairy King.
I know Fairy King's trying pretty hard.
He's working.
He's really struggling. But let's talk about Fluter Flam, because he is a lot of fun.
I love Fluter Flam.
Fluter Flam is a bard with a harp that strings break when he lies, and he lies a lot. He's an embellisher for sure. But I love it, and I love that he's open about his lying. Yeah. Like, he's very much like, listen, I'm a storyteller. Right. Like, it's very, like, and I appreciate that.
Another thing that's important about Fluter Flam is that he's also the king of his own, like, domain under the High King.
But he's just never there.
He's just never doing his job. He ran off to the city to try to be a bard. He abdicated, I'm going to put that in quotes, to be a bard, and he failed out of bard school. But the head bard took pity on him and was like, dude,
have this harp.
So it's a harp that's very beautiful. It makes a beautiful sound, but it also breaks a string or two every time he lies.
Or gets, like, really tied or out of tune, or, like, essentially the more he lies, the more out of shape the instrument gets. And as someone who plays an instrument, that would be, which I don't really lie a lot, but if I lied a lot, that would be super annoying. Yeah. But it's great, because I was just going to say, it's just great because he just very openly is like, this thing breaks when I lie, and then just blatantly lies right in front of it. Like, he does not care.
Does not at all. But another thing I love about Fluter Flam is I've been thinking for years, I'm pretty sure Fluter Flam is an author insert character. And I think that because he's another character type that comes up again and again, and because he feels the kind of advice he delivers feels less fantasy writing-y.
I will say, I don't know if he's an author insert or not, but as a writer, you fall in love with characters, and sometimes you just can't let them go, and you just have to keep writing them, okay? Because it's not necessarily, I have some that aren't author inserts that I'm just like, you're just still in my head, I gotta keep writing them.
Fluter Flam in particular, though, I've always suspected was an author insert, and we found out, according to Wikipedia at least, that this is true, and I feel very vindicated. So that's that. Fluter Flam is great. He's actually pretty good at being a king. He just hates doing it. Yeah. Which is my favorite.
Yeah. It's very much that sort of like Barry style of like, should you do what you're good at or what you love?
Yeah. It's great. and so that brings us to the last member of our 5-man band, which is Dolly, who is a fairy dwarf, I believe.
think so, or Dwarfish.
Yeah. We meet him underground. He's a guide assigned to the group by the king of the fairies, who barely scooched out from being or doing the most character.
He tried.
He tried real hard.
So hard.
The Fairy King is great. He's a very extra character.
He's like that guy that's real fussy, who's just always trying to, like, be the best, but also, like, wants the most attention, but also wants to seem like they don't care.
Yeah, he's a lot. Hard. He's a lot. Like, the Fairy King is a lot. I'm not even going to try to say his name.
No.
I do pretty good with the Welsh names if they're short, like Eilonwy and Gwydion and stuff. But, his is a bit long.
Yeah.
But he's really funny to me. I like the idea that...
talking about the Fairy King
still? The Fairy King still. And kind of all the fairies, and it continues to be this way throughout the story. They're all very salty.
Yes.
All of them. And I kind of like that fairies in this story are portrayed as kind of like a blue-collar grifters. Like...
Well, the Fairy King straight up is like, hey, we're trying to do all this stuff to impress you guys, and you don't even care. You don't even do stuff for us.
And Eilonwy's like, then why? But why, though?
He's like, because we've got to. Like, because we must.
No, he said because of professional pride.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Professional pride. But and then he kind of wants to, he's very weaselly.
Yeah.
Like, which I think is fair because he's the fairy king.
He's the king of the fairies, but it's just such a different, unique take on what fair folk are. And it's
instead of that sort of dignified secret.
Yeah, or like, even like going as far as like the Terry Pratchett like subversion of that. Like it's none of those things. And it's also not like the fae creatures of British stories. It's very much its own bent on the fair folk.
It's great.
It makes it feel very grounded in something different, which I think is important because it's so based in a specific mythology.
Yeah. But Dolly specifically wants to be invisible.
Yes.
So he's always like holding his breath and he looks like he's constipated all the time.
It's great.
Because he thinks if he and I don't understand the correlation between holding his breath and being invisible. Like, is his family, do they have to hold their breath to be invisible? Because he never specifies. He's just, he thinks if he holds his breath.
I don't think it's about the breath holding thing. I think it's just him not breathing because he's concentrating so hard on being invisible.
I can see that. I want it for him.
I do.
I want him to be invisible so bad.
Right? And he's also very salty. He's kind of salty in like a New York construction worker foreman kind of way.
He has a very like prickly exterior, but I don't think that necessarily means...
Eilonwy compares him to a hedgehog.
Yeah, he's very prickly, but he likes them in like that sort of rough, like, you idiots that I'm always with and I care about and would fight for.
Morons.
Yeah, like
my children here.
Yes.
Like he very much, and you'll learn too more about him, but he very much sees them. He's very old. He does very much see them as all like little babies that he has to take care of. And just like this for him is like a sitcom. For everybody else, it's like, you know, it's his 3 men and a baby. But Dolly's a lot of fun. And at the end, he's technically awarded the ability to become invisible by Prince Gwydion as a boon.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Yeah, because he can do that.
Because he can just do whatever. But Medowin...
Oh, yeah. No, this character doesn't fit anywhere else, but he's kind of magical, and so we're going to slot him in before the villains.
Yes.
But, okay, so Medwin, I keep calling not Tom Bombadil. He is he's kind of, I guess he is kind of a lamp character.
No, I don't think he's a lamp character at all.
Because I'm
sorry, guys, I didn't mean to cough at you.
We're dying. So Medwin is basically the king of the animals.
Yeah.
He wears a fancy crown with some stuff in it, like a fancy jewel in the middle.
He just has bears over for breakfast.
Yeah.
And whatever.
He doesn't like people very much.
So Gergie gets hurt at some point, and they don't know what to do. They think Gergie's going to die. And Taryn is like, I'm just going to let the horse lead because the horse knows what's up. So the horse just starts leading and takes them to Medowin.
It's Mellingar.
They would not have found otherwise.
No, absolutely not.
Only animals, I think, can find him typically. And he decides to help them. And he even offers for Taryn to stay, which I think is huge.
Yeah, it's a pretty big deal. And I think it sort of goes back to something we'll talk about here in a little bit when we talk about prophecies.
Yeah.
But it's sort of this idea of an implied thing about Taryn.
Kind of
something about Taryn is important. And
there's something about Taryn.
There's something about Taryn, and we don't really know what it is, and it's never even really discussed that there's something about Taryn.
Yeah.
It's just...
It's there.
It just keeps coming up.
It definitely feels like it's there.
It's a really beautiful way to foreshadow stuff because I know it's foreshadowing, but like
I don't. But I kept reading it being like, what is it?
What is it about this kid?
He?
And it's
I keep thinking like maybe his parents are really important, but I feel like that would be too like too classic. Like I feel like Alexander's going to do something different.
Yeah.
So I really apprecited it because I kept thinking, what is it?
It's a really interesting discussion about what destiny is.
Yeah.
The whole series is it's kind of...
Well, we'll get into it. We'll get into it. So anyway, Menomin is the king of the animals, and he is really kind, and he just helps them, and he's like a hermit. And
he's just bad at peopling.
He just chills in his little area and heals stuff and eats with animals. So he's cool.
But sort of like Tom Bombadil, the whole point of that little aside was some character growth, but not a lot of plot stuff. Although we did learn that chickens are not very smart, even in this universe.
Yeah. I will say I liked that he was sort of the safe haven within this universe. Yeah. Like the place that can't be touched, like the Shire.
The Noah character. Yeah. I think he's supposed to be... I remember learning more about this character a long, long time ago. And listeners, if you know anything about Welsh mythology, feel free to type about how I'm wrong. But I believe that the Medwin character is considered one of the proto characters that Noah is based off of. Like, or the character that he's based off of. So, or it's not really a character if it's in mythology. It's sort of figure of legend, I guess. Yeah, so now for the baddies.
Let's talk about some evil people.
Yeah, first off is a style icon, Akron.
She is Eilonwe's. I want to say Eilonwe. I read it that way. I know it's not right, but I don't care. Her aunt. She's been sent to live with and is evil.
She's supposed to be learning to be an enchantress from her because in Eilonwe's family, if you're a girl and you're a princess, you're supposed to learn to be an enchantress.
So they send her to live with her aunt, who is evil.
Yeah, so evil aunt, boarding school. Evil aunt used to be the ruler of all the lands, but she was tricked by the big baddie of the story into losing a bunch of her power and giving it up to him. And
was that expressed in this book?
Yes. And now
there's some stuff, guys.
Girl.
I'm sorry. I got into the book, and usually I remember, but we had a delay.
It's been a crazy.
We had a delay between reading and note taking.
Yeah. It's been a time.
Anyway,
where were we?
I'm sorry. So she fell to the Dark Lord, and
she basically became subservient to Iran, the big bad. But she's basically vampy. She glamours herself to look younger than she is. She's got it. She's real thirsty for Gwydion.
Yeah,
it's pretty sad. And she works for Iran,
who is our big bad.
Big bad. He's basically the Lord of Death, the Lord of Anuba and the Land of Death. He's Sauron in this story.
I was going to say he's Sauron.
And much like Lord of the Rings, he has a battle proxy in the Horned King, who is like
really interesting.
Yeah. He's like one of those Briar Hearts are based off of, I think, the same type of creature in Welsh mythology. So if you don't play Skyrim, I'm sorry that I'm like that. But in Skyrim, and in this book, the Horned King is a warrior or a war lord, I believe, who is super hyper powerful. He's banded all the other warlords together under the rulership of Iran, and he has a human skull and antlers for a head.
It's so cool. Like, he's evil. I know, I'm sorry. Like, he's evil and I don't like him.
No,
our first imagery of him is so neat.
It's so beautifully written.
So, I couldn't help but think he was kind of cool, and he's very terrifying sounding, and I thought that was well done. He seemed very imposing.
His art on the front, he's got a 12-pack.
Yeah, he's very buff.
He's very extremely buff, and they even kept the red arms thing, too.
It's true.
Because his arms are all red from being stained with blood.
But I just like the ideas of antlers as a sign of evil. I don't know. I don't know why. I don't know what it comes from, but I just think it's interesting.
It is interesting. It is very interesting.
Anyway, he's bad.
Yeah, he's a bad guy, but he's our Darth Maul of the story.
He's mobilizing all the armies and moving out, and he's trying to get Penguin.
You mean Henwin?
What did I say?
Penguin.
I'm sorry.
Y'all, it's so late.
Please send help.
He's trying to kidnap Henwin because Henwin knows something, but we don't know until the end, of course, that Henwin knows his secret name. And if you've done a lot of fantasy reading, you've probably stumbled across...
Your true name has power.
Yes, the concept of your true name having power. This is a trope that holds true in this story for creatures of great power. Mm-hmm. And the Horned King is defeated because Gwydion eventually finds Henwin.
And Henwin shares his name, and Gwydion says the name.
Yeah. Henwin doesn't speak English. Gwydion speaks pig.
It's great.
It's great.
So, this book is very tonally well done.
It's
the
so
setting
great.
kind of, I kind of said, I wrote, the setting felt like passing tapestry. Mm-hmm. But it sets the tone really well. Even in the woods, when Taryn first leaves and goes into the woods, the dark, sort of omnipresent, like mystery of the unknown, very, very much felt real. Even though the setting isn't super important,
it's not super. It's defined because it's got a map. It's a fantasy story, but like it's not necessary to caring about the plot.
It's really not, but it's done really well because it still affects the plot. It still affects the tone of the story, and it still affects the morale of the characters well. Mm-hmm. Because, sometimes...
Because their surroundings tend to reflect them quite a bit. Or maybe they tend to be reflecting their surroundings quite a bit. I think there's something to be said. I hate cold weather. I don't like the winter time. Mm-hmm. And when it's cold and crummy outside, I feel like crap. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if one causes the other or not. I don't cause the cold, but I don't know if I'm being influenced by it or if it's that sort of coincidence of life.
Well, and then on top of that, you have the Care Dalben words, which I felt was a very, very good tonal haven as well. Yeah. And I kept, every time they talked about it, I felt like the sun was streaming through the window of a wood floor at a farm type, that warmth that comes from safety and home, and that sort of farmhouse warmth of the sun beating down. It was very clear to me. Every time they would even just say the name, and I was I just would see the sunset rolling in over the hills in Oklahoma, that very it felt very tangible.
Yeah, it's that sort of goes to something in our style notes that we talked about a lot before this, is he's very good about showing and not telling, because he's so tactile in his descriptions. Yeah. And that's sort of what I think makes Care Dalben stand out and makes these locations stand out in the story as part of the story. One example even is how he uses sounds. Yeah. In the story.
One example I wrote was light.
Yes. So we'll do my quote first.
Okay, I'm sorry.
So one of the lines I loved was, no bird called, no squirrel chattered. And I just really loved the specificity of using specific animal language, descriptors. Yeah. And that sort of makes it a little more visceral to me.
I knew that's what you were about to say. We love that word. We love the word visceral, guys.
I do. It feels good to say.
It does.
I'm bad at words, and so I just reach for stuff I use a lot. But it's very tactile. He talks about the texture of the world around them, and he does it in a way that reinforces. It's very meta, which kind of goes to your point when you're talking about his use of light. Yeah,
I didn't write a quote, but I did think that he used a very, very. I found myself a lot thinking about light. We've talked about in a lot of the YA books that we've read this season, color being a big thing, and the way that color is described and the way that color is used. he didn't use color in this so much as he used the way that light moved.
Light quality specifically, which as
like
a photographer,
sun streaming through the trees. Like it felt, and I am weak for that. Like I love light descriptions because I don't know, like there's something magical about light in general and the way that it, streams through the trees or comes over the side of a hill or like, and he just very much, I felt, brought light back in. And it worked really well for the story, which is very light versus dark and like finding light in a dark place or even finding darkness in a light place. And so that use of the descriptors of light really, really fit well with the story. And
well, that kind of goes to my point of, this sort of drags us right into our next point of the fact that he uses his descriptors in a very meta way, which I think is important as artists. We should try to gear as many elements of a piece towards the theme as possible. And he uses shadows, darkness, and light quality to reflect the story at the point we're in. And I think that's an underrated thing that he does that more authors should probably pay attention to. The sounds, like Taran's always thinking about the sounds he's hearing around him, and the sounds are reflective of the situation he's in.
And not just that, but it works for his character because he grew up on a farm, which I just feel like something that you think about sound because you're listening to the animals, you're listening to people working in the field.
So the fact that he turns something that's both a style, tonal thing into something that's also symbolism for the story is just chef kiss.
Yeah, I already did the chef kiss.
Yeah. I don't care. I didn't do it.
He didn't over-explain to the audience too much. Like we talked about him showing, not telling, but really, like he lets you kind of come to your own conclusions, which for young people, like reading the book, I think is important because there are things I took from it now as an adult that I didn't glean when I was younger that I really appreciate that he just kind of put in there and didn't draw attention to. But you mentioned the Tolkien syndrome.
Yes. I think at some points this book is very Tolkien-y.
Yeah.
And I'd be interested there are a lot of parallels between their careers in some ways, in the sense that they both served in World War II. Well, actually, didn't Tolkien serve in World War I? I don't know. But it's definitely influenced by Tolkien a lot, and it hits a lot of the same story beats, but it sort of twists them up a little bit. And I kind of wonder how much of this story, because he does have a background in satire, it was meant to be sort of a serious twist up of the genre.
I don't know that that's necessarily, maybe. I think some of it was for sure. But I think they have a similar source material. You mentioned that they read a lot of the same authors.
Well, thinking about it, like, if Lord of the Rings is based in large part off of, like, the history and legends of the British Isles, which includes Wales, and this is based in large part off of Welsh traditional mythology, there's going to be quite a bit of overlap, I think, in the source material already, but
they tackled it differently.
Yeah, they both have a very different approach, and I think it's because they both are approaching the mythology from a different life philosophy in a lot of ways. Like, Tolkien to me feels very cynical, especially in the way it ends, whereas this book, it's a sweet cynicism.
Yeah.
That's a tough word to say. Oh my gosh. And it's a very bittersweet feeling in this book in a way where, like, at the end of the Lord of the Rings series, I just feel sad and kind of despondent because it just feels like a very hopeless ending in a lot of ways to me.
In some ways, yes, I agree.
It's like, this is your life. It's pretty empty.
It's supposed to be bittersweet, but it doesn't feel
bittersweet. This feels bittersweet to me.
Yes, I agree.
In a lot of ways, because, there's, to have bitter, you have to have sweet, and that's what Tolkien's lacking quite a bit of.
And I think, he definitely has some of the same, like, high fantasy style of descriptors. I had a little bit of trouble getting into this book, which is weird because I love this style. But once I got into it, I was really into it. And I don't think he waxes poetic nearly as often as Tolkien
No.
does. And not nearly as long when he does do it. He's very concise for a high fantasy author.
Right. Well, and I think that goes back to what I was saying is it seems like he's trying to gear every element of the story back towards a purpose, which means his descriptions, his symbolism, if it means something at all, or if it can mean something, he's trying to point it back towards the overarching themes that we discussed. We got to talk about also, because this is a Welsh mythology thing, trees and plants come up quite a bit.
Yeah, I think he did a really good job like describing nature and sort of showing people in nature. It felt to me that he spends a lot of time out.
Yeah, he definitely is an out guy.
Yeah, it felt real and again tangible to me.
I was gonna say, and we're outdoorsy people.
Yeah,
like we go camping a lot, and it felt like this is someone who's been cold outside before and had to sleep like that, and this is someone who's had to learn to deal. But I'm even thinking of like how he uses just trees and plants as a symbol in the story.
Oh well, before we do that. One more comment about his style, which is that he does a really good job making all of the character voices very distinct and different.
I agree with that because they're all unique. They all feel like very distinct. It feels like he did the work on the front end for all of these characters. And it's nice to say that about an author. They're like, they clearly were thinking about the end product for this, and they were thinking about the editing process, and this is someone who's definitely experienced in this industry, and it shows. It really does.
Sorry, talk about the trees and plants.
Trees and the plants. They are symbolic of stuff. Like
they mean something.
They mean things. There's this sort of good versus evil, life versus death theme throughout the story, and it's obviously more complicated than that, and it stays more complicated than that. And I'm going to try and tie all this together in a big circle, but I'm very tired, so we'll see how it turns out.
I also have opinions about the plants and trees.
Yeah. Okay, so trees and plants kind of fit in with my belief that the point of this story is to reinforce this idea that life and death are just sort of flip sides of a coin and not necessarily representative of good and evil. And it does kind of come up in a more explicit way when they discuss the Cauldron Born, but the theme of lineage and what that means, and like things like death and barrows come up quite a bit in discussions of lineage, and the trees and plants come up quite a lot when discussing the life-giving elements of Prydain, and
as well as growth and
change,
which is kind of obvious, but I felt the need to say that.
Exactly. So, and you see the same sort of reinforcement between weapons versus tools. You see, like, initially Taran really wants a sword. He wants to know how to make a sword. He wants to know how to fight with a sword. And by the time he finally gets one in his hands and he's face to face with what a sword can do, it kind of shakes him up a little bit. I think the discussion of what's more important in life, a weapon or a tool, and maybe it's both, comes up quite a bit. Like the oldest character, probably Dolly, uses a hatchet, for example, or an axe. And Flutterflam is a pretty accomplished, like he teaches them all how to quickly use a bow and arrow in the middle of a quick firefight. You get this sort of push and pull
duality.
You get this sort of duality because at the very beginning, when Taran's wanting to make that sword, Cole's trying to teach him how to make a horseshoe, but he doesn't even have a horse.
Yeah.
But at the very end, it's way more important that he knows how to make a horseshoe because he's got this great horse he got from this, his friend's brood, and now he has to take care of it, and he has to learn how to make the tools, and that's more important to him. And I'm not very cogent at the moment, but I think there's something to that dichotomy.
He definitely tightly weaves his symbolism and the plot of the book and the purposes for those symbols really, 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 really tightly. And sorry,
it's okay.
And not only that, but he really, really shows that duality and the overlap well, because they all have a bit of overlap, because it's not one or the other in any of them.
And like kind of brings us to the sword, which I'm also not going to try to pronounce. The sword has a name.
Sword.
The fancy lightning sword. We both kind of wanted to talk about it. We put it in symbolism because it doesn't really fit anywhere else.
Yeah.
So yeah, it just doesn't fit anywhere else. But the sword it's a magic sword. It was the sword of an old, important, original High King. They find it in a barrow, which is a Welsh burial mound, which kind of comes back to our time lineage discussion a bit, where it's all related. And Eilonwy, being royal and being taught by
and knowing magic,
Akron, and knowing magic, recognizes that the language on it is not really a curse so much as like a language of power, like old magic. And so she's like, I'm going to hold on to this for safekeeping. She pulls it out of the barrow, and it becomes an annoying plot thing that comes up a lot until the end.
I don't think it's annoying. I thought it was interesting. But she's trying to keep the sword safe and keep Taran from using it because he wants to use it.
He wants to use it so bad because it's shiny.
And it's shiny and he wants it. But actually, he doesn't really care as much as she seems to imply that he cares. He cares a little at first, and then he's kind of like, whatever.
Wants to give him a hard time, I think.
But at the end, circumstances make it so that Taran feels he must use the sword. He pulls the sword from the sheath, and
it hurts him.
Because he is not
royal. He is explicitly not royal. And royal in this universe, Eilonwy's talking about it in the sense that it's like a, not royal because you're related to a king, but royal in the cosmic sense, which I thought was an interesting thing as a concept to come up, because it does kind of come up again later in the series. And I love that he uses cyclical storytelling that way. I even wrote down, I think that's what I was talking about when I wrote down Pete and Repeat.
I think you were talking about his reuse of characters when you wrote Pete and Repeat.
Then it's re-inspired me to say something else.
Pete and repeated you.
It Pete and repeated me. He likes that sort of cyclical storytelling. He likes tying the themes back in with each other quite a bit.
So well.
Just
like churning a fine butter.
Yeah, it's so nice. I love this book, and we should probably talk about anything else in symbolism.
Well, you weren't done talking.
I mean, we wanted to talk about time and change a little bit.
Yeah, I think he really utilizes the passage of time. And the changes that they go through are very subtle. And I always like books that sort of tackle that problem because it makes me sad. I went through a phase when I was younger, guys, when I was about to graduate high school, where I was like, I don't want to be a grown-up. I don't want time to change. I don't want to be different. And so I just sat in my room and watched Peter Pan, like, adaptations for like a week until my mom came in and took them away. And you know, it's just one of those things that I think is really, really, when it's written well in a story, it's so beautiful. And like, he does a really good job in this of not just the changes in Taran, but especially in Taran, of growing as a person.
Growth,
and by the end of the book, you really, I mean, really in the beginning almost, but by the end, you really, really root for him. And he does a really good job of showing when Taran comes back and just being like, they're like, you were awesome, you were heroic. And he was like, I was just there.
Yeah, he's starting to realize.
I was just one element of this.
Yeah, it's that moment of true humility. And that's such a nice thing to model for kids, too. Because it's so rarely modeled well in literature. Especially for the 14 and up demographic. Humility is not something that's emphasized for the teens.
But on top of it, the melancholy of growing up. The sort of empty, bittersweet feeling of coming back to a space and it feeling different. But it's not because the space is different.
It's because you're different.
And it really ties in to the point of our podcast, which is... Sorry. No,
that was
really
awesome.
But it really ties into the point of our podcast in revisiting an old story that may have felt so familiar, like reading a Tamara Pierce book, or even when we read Homeless Bird, and it feeling different because you're different. And I just like that sort of bittersweet sadness that comes from revisiting something nostalgic. I thought he just did that really, really well. And the times that he showed the passage of time and the way that he showed that change was just really tightly woven into that when they come back at the end and you kind of feel sad with them.
Yeah. I will say the pacing in this book is great. It's, I think, a lot stronger than in the second book, if I remember correctly. There's some, I had pacing issues with the second book specifically. But it's been a minute, so it's been literally 6 months since I read the series. I'm so glad we picked it as an alternate. I was so excited. Did you have any other thoughts?
I know that we talked about, sorry guys, I'm trying not to cough. I know that we talked about how he poses the question of what it takes to be a hero or what makes a hero, the nature of heroism. But I really wanted to kind of revisit that here at the end and just talk about, like, especially Taran and the fact that he is not classically a hero. And throughout the events of the book, he doesn't do anything inherently heroic.
No.
The only thing that he does that would be considered, like, heroic in terms of, like, classically is saving the Gwythain, and everyone's mad at him for it.
Yeah, he does the moral thing, and that's the one moral decision he makes is the thing everybody thinks is going to doom them, and it turns out to be the thing that saves everybody. And so, even though he doesn't acknowledge that kindness in himself, it's the fact that
it's there.
Making the moral choice is always the right choice. Always, always, always.
And I really loved that moment.
Yeah.
I read that moment when he was saving it, and I was like, man, good on you.
Yeah.
Like, I kind of got chills a little bit.
Exactly.
And then I knew that wasn't going to bite him
so
in the butt.
good at making, like, building tension in those stories, especially when, like, both Eilonwy and Flutterflam are mad at Taran, because both of them are usually so chipper together, and they're not always, one of them is always on his side.
Yeah.
So seeing, like,
them both being like, this is stupid, what are you doing? And, like, being angry at him for it. And then when it runs off, the Gwythain gets better and leaves, and they think it's going to come for them. It's going to bring
all of its friends
on to them. But then it doesn't. It goes and it helps. And, like, they don't even know that till after the fact. They think that it did betray them whenever they get caught out. And later you find out, no, the Gwythain is like a bird that they typically work for the big bad.
It's like the Nazguls.
Yes, it's the Nazguls.
Like
I kept thinking that throughout the book, but I wasn't going to say it. But this one it's a baby, and he saves it, and he learned from Medwyn that they are kind of captives.
Yeah, they're basically tortured into being servants of Iran from birth, so they don't really have a choice.
So when he saves it, it's kind of, he realizes, like, he recognizes that this bird doesn't have a lot of free will, but he still helps it, and the bird goes to Gwydion and is like, hey. So it's just, I really liked that sort of him. The most heroic thing he did is the thing that made everyone angry at him.
Yeah.
But he did it anyway because it was the right thing.
Exactly.
And it ended up being the right thing.
Exactly.
So I just thought that was well done, and I wanted to take a moment to talk about it.
Is there anything in the story you didn't like?
Like I said, it was a bit difficult to get into.
Yeah.
I don't know why. I don't know why, but it was. And there were also moments that felt a bit abrupt to me. But overall, I think it was just really tightly woven and well done. I think I didn't really feel like there was anything that I just didn't like. There were things that I think probably could have been better in terms of, like, we spent a lot of time with Medwyn, which I didn't really feel like we needed to spend that much time.
Yeah, he didn't do much to serve the plot.
And also, like, I want more for Taran a little bit.
Yeah.
Like, which sounds terrible because that's the whole point of the story. And so but I want him to be kind of heroic. I want him to have those moments and, like, and he is heroic. Like, that's not to say he's not. He's kind, and
it just subverts that quite a bit.
Yeah, it makes him heroic in a different way. And I like that, but I also want him to have that, like, moment of pride of, like, doing something really well and being right. And I know that that's not his, like, path. And so it's frustrating, I guess, but that's how it's supposed to be, so I can't really complain about it. It's on purpose. I want to know what happens. I want to read the rest of the series. I like that he didn't take a gift at the end.
Yeah.
He was the only one of their whole group. So at the very end, Gwydion gives them all, like, prizes for being...
Hooray for the heroes.
Yes, hooray for the heroes. And when he asks Taryn what he wants, and you can clearly tell that he really wants to give Taryn a gift. Like, that's kind of, I think, the purpose of it.
He says something along the lines of, I know you really want to be a hero and go on adventures, so what is it that you want? Mm-hmm. And Taryn goes, I want to go home.
Yeah, that's what he wants. He doesn't want like a gift.
And it surprises Gwydion, like impresses him, but surprises him. And I think disappoints him a little bit.
I don't know that it I
think he was excited to have this like new kid to train.
Yeah.
This like new like and in a way I think that's a statement about Gwydion's kind of hubris, where he still has room where he needs to grow and how he sees the people around him. So I don't know. That's just my own speculation now.
My last thing was, I think that Lloyd Alexander's take on growing and seeing the world certainly feels as though it is from experience and having had to be teachable. Yeah. And I get the vibe maybe he was a very young, cocky soldier or a very young, cocky boy and had to kind of be put in his place a little bit.
Get knocked down a few pegs a few times.
Yeah, and I think that shows whenever he even talks about writing being harder than he expected, things like that. I think he was very much venture out into the world and learn by doing,
kick the door in, ask questions later.
And had to learn the hard way. And I think this book is very much a book about learning the hard way.
Yeah, I think it is.
I like that.
It's a lot of fun. It's still one of my favorites to this day. So,
Did you have anything else you wanted to say or anything you didn't like?
I will say, I'm sure there's stuff I didn't like. So
I'm sure it's there.
I couldn't think of anything specifically though. So I just sort of dock general, like a general quarter points in the literary merit category.
That's kind of what I do a little bit.
Like a general, just in case one day we have like the great American YA novel in here.
Well, I think for me, it was you could tell it was a bit more childish in some ways, which is why I didn't give as many points as I gave to the Tamara Pierce book, which was a lot more for older young adults. So I think that aspect of it, but that's not bad inherently. It's just, you could tell a little bit more that it was for younger audiences.
We got to talk about our tropes.
Here are the tropes that we found. Outfit descriptions.
Those are meta too in this story.
They are.
For the record, he discusses Taryn discusses the outfits of people around him throughout the book, and how he discusses them how he talks about them changes as he changes.
As he realizes it's not as important.
Yeah. When he's initially very disappointed with how raggedy Prince Gwydion looks.
Yeah.
Until he realizes that Prince Gwydion is still the real deal.
Yeah.
You know, and it's not really what he's got going on the outside.
And that's kind of how it goes throughout the book, is him learning more and more, like, to see the person not how they're adorned.
Exactly.
Dead parents, orphans.
Yep, lots of orphans.
Yeah, a mentor character. There were a lot of those.
Lots of those.
A MacGuffin.
I would say Hedwyn served as a MacGuffin somewhat. And I think the sword was a little MacGuffin-y.
Yeah.
And like, you know.
We put puberty symbolism question mark because there was stuff that I felt was puberty.
A little puberty-esque.
But it wasn't necessarily...
But we're not going to say anything because we're trying to bait you guys into discussing it in the comments.
Yeah,
because I want to know if you guys think there's puberty symbolism, because we could not come to an accord
on certain things.
And it would be really funny if you guys didn't even bring up any of those specific things, if they brought up totally different things.
Yeah, I'd like to know.
That would be fun. So if you think about it, come tell us what you think.
The last one we put on here, the fun thing about this tropes count was all of them were kind of like arguable, because it turns all of the tropes on their heads really well, but they were still the tropes, which is why we really wanted to talk about it.
This last one is my favorite.
The last one that we put on here was prophecy. We don't ever hear a prophecy in this book.
Nope.
But it is definitely there.
It's the only time I've ever read about an implied prophecy, but it's never referenced. It's implied, and there's a difference there. Mm-hmm. They never discuss a prophecy at all. However, there are a lot of closed-door conversations that Taryn is not privy to. Mm-hmm. And there are a lot of sort of situations of happenstance that imply that Taryn might be more than meets the eye. But we know for a fact that he is not magical in the royal, like, sense of, like, he's not, like, elfin from the West Isles or whatever.
It's interesting.
Like,
and, you know,
he's definitely human.
Is a prophetic pig, but we never hear her prophecies either. So it's really interesting to me because we wanted to go ahead and put it on here because all of the tropes that we found were ways that he subverted them. That was really fun.
It's really fun, and I love it.
Which is why we talk about tropes, because they are important.
And they can be very useful in telling and writing a story. Yeah. Even if you're not using them in this way where you're subverting them, they can be very useful shorthand sometimes in getting something across.
I agree. So for literary merit, I gave this a 4.5.
I put that in the wrong category. I put mine out of order, guys. Sorry. 4.5. I gave it a 4.75 because I dubbed the aforementioned quarter doc. I gave it a 5 for personal opinion though.
You're going out of order.
I'm sorry. I told you I wrote it out of order. Entertainment is 4.5 for me.
I gave it a 4.7. I really liked it. I wasn't quite as enthralled as I was in the Tamara Peters book, but
it was hard to analyze.
But once I got into it, I had a hard time slowing down and actually analyzing it. So I gave it 4.7. My overall opinion was a 4.5.
4.5, and I gave it a 5 for personal opinion, and just because I love it, and I'm still probably gonna reread it next year. It's a good when the leaves are turning, and I need some Welsh mythology in my life.
I'm excited to finish this season so that I can go back and read the rest of the books. Yeah. I've got to read our next book, and I'm really excited to read the rest of these, and I can't do it yet, so I'll wait. While she tabulates, I just kind of want to talk about our season is going to wrap up soon. So we have not very many episodes left. We're doing 12 episodes in the season. So we have, 2 books left, I think?
I believe
Let me look at the little list here.
We have a list.
We have a game plan. So we have 2 books left for the season, and then we're going to take a break while we kind of gear up for the next season, and just so that we don't get burnout on reading a bunch of books. And we want to give you guys kind of chunks of books so that you can maybe go back and read them, that kind of thing. That said, at the end of the season, we may have a couple of extra episodes coming out.
Yeah, some little
in-betweens. And one of the things that we're thinking about doing is a question and answer Q&A. Yeah. Little snippet. And we would love to hear from you guys if you're interested in any
tell us if you're not interested in that, but
yeah, be we don't like you.
Please don't do a Q&A. We would rather just have another episode, thanks.
But yeah, we were thinking about maybe doing a Q&A, so if you guys have any questions or thoughts about the book or anything like that you'd like to discuss, please feel free to comment on our Instagram, our Facebook page, Twitter, or you can even email us directly. It's y.a.sisterhoodpodcast@gmail.com. And I'm terrible about checking it, but I will definitely be checking it if we're going to do a Q&A. So
now, as of right now, we'll check better. But I will say we have gotten I've gotten a few text recommendations from people following the podcast who aren't good at comments either. I'm bad at social media, so
if you have some recommendations or books you'd love to hear us discuss, also reach out about that, and maybe we'll kind of tell you some of the books that are...
It's a vast world of life.
Well, maybe if we do a Q&A, we'll read all of the books that have been recommended, so you might have a head start on some of the guesses next season.
That could be fun.
So give us a shout out if you're interested. And are you finished tabulating?
I'm finished tabulating.
All right.
We are at 4.65 for this book.
That is legitimately lower than I expected.
Really?
Yeah, I thought it was going to be higher because you gave it really high scores.
Yeah.
But it's still really high. It's definitely
among our tops.
It's a legendary book. It is a book of legend.
It is a book of legends. So don't touch it if you aren't a fancy magical royal.
Please read it.
Yeah, read the book. It's great.
It's very good.
Check out any other Lloyd Alexander. I think he's a good time.
This one I had a hard time finding at the library, so you may have a bit of a difficult time finding it. But
it was checked out though at the library, so I think it's still. I think it's still got a pretty strong fan following out there. It's got a pretty strong fan base, and people still read it. Yeah. So
still good.
The Black Cauldron is booked too. So I was wrong about it being 3 books at the end here, coming in clutch.
All right. Well, thank you guys so much for listening.
Thank you.
And
we'll check you next week
hopefully we're sounding
if
less
we're alive
ill.
next week. And we'll see you then.
Yeah. Bye.
Bye.